Hi everybody, I'm Tony Visco. I'm your host for Painting for Pleasure, and today we're going to do some beautiful fall scene. A few trees, very bright, nice color in the leaves. All this beautiful oranges and reds, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, the brighter stuff. So before we start, I roughed this out, and what I did here to rough it out is to actually come in with my pencil, and I drew my sketch a little bit more to indicate where the trees are. These are the dark areas that are over here, those trees. It's very difficult. If I left just lines in there, it's hard to find your way around. You can't distinguish the trunks and branches from the leaves. This is going to be mostly a wet and wet watercolor, and what I wanted to make a point of here is that we're doing these trees as a fall scene, but I want to show you the basics for the trees as well. So the first thing I want to do is to show you that. Come up, as this trunk comes up closer to the top, as it gets up in here, it gets narrower and narrower. This is just a basic tree, and generally speaking what happens is that the trunk has branches off of it and limbs off of it and so forth. So those usually, when we do these, we like to do them so that they are not directly, when we bring a branch off from the front or the side, we don't want to come off directly opposite with another one. So we're juxtaposing this a little bit so that there's always a little bit of a change. You can see how this branch here is a little bit higher than this one, and that branch there is a little bit higher. That branch is a little bit lower than this one right here, and so forth all the way up. And some of the times what happens is that when you want that branch to come closer to you, you've got this sort of bend over here, and then with shadow you'll bring it closer. So we got the trunk, we have the limbs, we have branches off that which are a little bit thinner, and then we have a lot of twigs. Now this is a tree without leaves. And essentially all of the branches and all of the limbs actually, or I should say all of the twigs, are going to be painted with my rigger, and it's very thin. Twigs are thin. All right. So in terms of painting, and I'm going to show you the black and white here. In terms of a painting like this in black and white, we've got a lot of beautiful leaves here, and we can see some of the limbs through those bunches of leaves that are over here. These are maple, pretty much all maple trees, I think. But nonetheless, these are all going to be nice and bright, very varying colors, and the tree trunks are going to be dark. Okay, so this is the basics for the trunk. Now, while we're talking about the trunks, this is the basics for a wet and wet kind of a tree that's leafy. You'll notice here basically that I'm really not going to concentrating a lot in these areas with fine detail. These are just forms, shapes, and you want these shapes here to be quite interesting and juxtaposed so that they're not all symmetrical. Very important. You don't want symmetry in this kind of stuff. So that's what we're dealing with here, is just basically warms up here, coolers under here, our branches between the clumps or the shapes that we've got over here, so that we indicate the trees. Some of these are going to be in front, and then in the dark areas you can run branches that are over here, but you don't want to run them necessarily in the light areas. You want to try to avoid that. The darker areas are where light can't get to. It's okay to put branches there. If you get a lot of light, you're going to sort of, a lot of light where the sun's hitting at the top of this, those branches are going to be hidden predominantly pretty light. So this is the idea. We're going to end up doing that. I'm not going to do it exactly like that, obviously. These are just, what I wanted to just show you was the basics for those. And we're going to end up doing this a little bit differently. So I'm going to come in here, and we're going to take our brushes, and we're going to start to work. what I want to do is, first of all, come in here and I want to lay the sky in. And the sky's going to be nice and bright. And we're going to end up, what I'm going to end up first doing before I even do anything at all is I'm going to wet my paper. So we're going to come down here. I'm using a bigger mop brush to just sort of wet my paper over here, get it nice and fluidy. And I'm going to wet basically down right here to the horizon line where these hills are. Now I want to go, I'm going to go relatively slow because I don't want this to be, I want you to paint with me, get the feeling of what we're doing. So I'm going to slow down my talk, I'm going to slow down the painting. So we're just going to come over here and wet down, probably right down here to the horizon line where the hills are. This is still all going to be grass. And now what I want that water to do is to saturate my paper. I want that water to get into the fibers of the paper. That's the first step. Now we've done trees in the past. There's no question about it. But we've never done something as like what I'm going to do right now. If you can take a look at what's here, I don't want to put it down here because this is wet, I'm going to hold it. But this essentially is our what we're going to be shooting for here. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit so that you can get to see it. Okay. So this is a pretty colorful set of or grouping of trees with a nice bright background on a hill, a little bit of shadow, a few rocks. We've never quite done anything as dramatic in terms of energy and brilliance as this before, but we're going to give it a shot. Here we go. So let's go back. Let me back this out a bit here. We'll zoom back out, and then what we'll do is we'll get started on this. And I'm going to, again, this is going to be not a detailed painting. I don't want to get into all of the minutiae, all of the really tiny details of all of the leaves in that tree and so those trees and so forth. What I want to do is give you give you some characteristic shapes that are indicative of what we're looking at here. So, as a guide, you know, you saw my black and white right here, and again, wetting this. I'm going to go back and wet it again. Right? And the reason I want it nice and wet is because I'm going to flow in some of my sky first. And the paper, if the paper is saturated, then it's going to work a lot better. So my sky is going to be cobalt blue to cerulean blue. I'm going to take a little bit of cobalt blue up in this area. So here's my palette. It's all cleaned, ready to go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is come over here and take a little bit of cobalt blue and come in here, and in this area up here I'm going to just run some cobalt blue. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to actually come in here and run some cobalt blue throughout this, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get my cerulean blue. Okay, and I'm going to put my cerulean blue in down here. And you'll notice that I'm going through most of this stuff. Why am I going through everything? Well, the bottom line is that if we're dealing with trees, we're dealing with holes in trees, and we're seeing the background. We're seeing the sky in the background, and we're seeing the sky between some of the leaves in the tree. Okay, so I don't know exactly where they're going to be, but I'm going to just sort of put some of the cerulean blue down here, a little bit more cobalt blue up in this area here. I'll make this a little bit darker. So we're moving from warm to cool. And what I'm going to also do is come in here with a little bit of yellow ochre down in this area. Sorry about that, but this looks, I don't want to get it too muddy, so I'm going to change that up a little bit. And come in here and use a little bit lighter yellow. It's almost going to be greenish in effect, but it's okay. It's all down in this area here. Because I'm going to end up going, this is all going to be mountains in the background anyway, okay? And we're going to end up actually making some of those, some of that stuff down in that area interesting, in that it's going to have some of that tone that I just put in, that light green tone. Okay, so I'm doing this because I want you to understand that as complicated as that set of trees, these images that we're working with right here, as complicated as that looks with all of the leaves that are over here, we are simplifying this. Our goal here is to do this so that it's just a beautiful, simple statement. So what happens in the trees, we're going to put them up. I'm going to end up doing the darks over here and the lights. Normally I work basically from the sky down into this area here. So eventually this is all going to be nice and colorful, some greens and some of all of these leaves that are falling down from the trees and so forth. But we're going to go into that in a bit. Now, normally when I'm doing something like this, what I want to do is I want to put in, before I put the trunks in, what I want to do is I want to put in all of that foliage. The trunks, I got them outlined. They're dark. So this is a process of knowing where the darks are going to be, but we're going to put our warm colors, all of those brilliant colors, into the leaves first. And then we're going to put our trunks in. And that means simply that I'm going to leave holes or areas in the painting where I'm planning to put my my trunks. My sky's in. I can actually, if I want to make some clouds here, I can take a little bit of tissue and come down over here and make a little bit of clouds down here. But you know what? All of this white stuff that's in here is going to act as clouds anyway, so you really don't need to do that. If I were going to do that, and I'll just do it right down here, I'll just show you. I take some water just with the tissue and just softly come back here and lift that stuff out. You can create whispers of clouds when you do stuff like that. All right? Tissues are great to paint with, by the way. As an example, if I want to do something right here, and all right, I'm going to come in here with, here's what's happening. We're going to use cadmium. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my cadmium orange, my cadmium yellow, my red, I'm going to mix that with my opera rose. We're going to come in with a little bit of yellow ochre. Now, but I want it to be sustaining. I want it to be nice and bright. So if I come in here with, my tissue, and I start to make strong areas, of my brilliant colors, that's one way to do this. I'm not doing it with a brush, I'm doing it with my tissue. Let me come over here with my cadmium yellow, let's say. Or actually, you know what I'll do is not even cadmium yellow. I'm going to use a little bit of New Gamboge, because it's nice and bright, and it's right at the end here, look. So what I'm doing is I'm coming over here and I'm starting to put in some brighter colors, right? I can do it with a brush, but we're going to end up coming over here first of all and doing tissue. Maybe a little bit of again, cadmium yellow, or in this case, not cadmium yellow, but my new gamboge, because a lot of the colors, a lot of the colors in the leaves behind. Now listen, behind this bright oranges. Here, let me show you what I'm talking about. All right. A lot of the colors in the leaves have a base color of yellow. You can see all of this beautiful yellow in the back. Right, so we're going to put all of that warm stuff in first. Okay, and if I use more water when I do this, I'm going to get a lighter value. All right, now it's going to be not only lighter, but because it's more water, it's wetter. So I'm going to have to look at that, think about that too, because I don't want to get this too dark, but I do want it to be strong enough. So you can see where I'm going with this. I want the colors to be nice and vibrant, strong. And you can see where I'm actually adding some of my yellow onto my blue sky. And what's happening with it? It's turning it a bit green, of course. When I put it over the white, it won't do that. But if I put it over the blue, I'm going to start to get some of that. Okay, so we're just patting all this in. Now I'm not using a sponge. You know, you can do this with a sponge too. But a sponge is going to be too coarse. I want the tissue. The tissue makes a softer approach to this whole thing. It gives me a nice feeling too of where my leaves are, and I can sort of walk through this fairly easily to see what I want to do, how I want to handle this. I'm going to actually put a lot of orange back here, a lot of reds, but we're going to load it up first of all. Some of this is going to be really bright. So let's get our yellow in there. Now, patting it is also going to give me the ability to leave some holes through which I'm going to see the sky and other things behind it, other trees and all this other kinds of things. There's always an opportunity here to play around and see other things. And this is just absolutely dynamite. I mean, it's just a nice way to do this. So again, I'm slowly getting in here with my tissue, and I'm dabbing where my leaves are going to be. And I'm looking at the blues in here and so forth. Some of that is going to be filled in with, really heavy color, a little stronger colors. Some of it is going to be filled in with my trunks, my tree trunks. But notice what I'm doing. I'm developing my tree base, my leaf base, all of this cluster relatively easily, am I not? I mean, look, the fact of the matter is that I could try to paint all of those leaves individually with a brush, small, tiny brush. I'd go absolutely nuts doing that, so not going there. I admire those people that can do it, but it's not me. It's not that I can't do it, but I'm not willing to do it. So let's get a little bit more red in this yellow. I want to get a little bit more maroon. Well, actually, you know what? Before I even do that, before I get into my reds, because I'm going to get nice maroon reds in here, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get in. I want to start to get my oranges in here, my nice brilliant oranges. So let's go pick up my, again, cadmium orange, and start to go back here and take a look at where some of that stuff is going to be. Okay. And our idea is not to copy. Now, please understand, what I'm looking at is reference material. What I'm going to end up with is a painting that I think will hopefully be pleasing to my audience. So I'm not here trying to copy my painting, my reference material, so much as I'm basically coming in here in trying to create an interesting, warm, delightful, energetic piece that is going to be pleasing to my audience. And it's going to be made up of yellows and greens and oranges, some darks, some lights. But the pattern is also interesting because it's a way in which we can achieve this general leafy feeling without getting too much brushwork in here, right? Now, what I'm concerned about this, because I'm going slow for everybody, but this is getting dry here, so let me see if I can maybe I can wet this up a bit more. Okay, so again, I'm just using my brush. I'm using my tissue as a brush. And I'm wetting, lifting up, picking up my cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, and then I'm going to start to put in and my new gamboge for my yellows back there, all right? I want some warmer, brighter material up here, almost opaque-like. I'm hoping that I can get a glow out of this here and there. All right, now I'm not only patting it, but I'm turning you'll notice what I'm doing here is I'm sort of working my brush so that it, my brush is my tissue, but I'm working that so that I can get the roundness of this maple leaf. Now I don't need to, this is stuff that people would hide. I mean, we don't need to show, the funny part about it is that I see a lot of painters and they'll do this stuff and you kind of look and say, well, how do they do that? And they're not really going to tell you if they can avoid it. But I believe that you ought to know the tricks and the trades of being able to get some of this stuff done. And this is just one of the ways, not the only way, but it's one of the ways. Okay, so what I don't want you to do, or what I don't want to do, is to have equal amounts of my yellow and equal amounts of my orange and equal amounts of red. I want to balance this off a little bit. So I'm going to come in here and make this a little bit deeper and darker because I want to change this up a little bit more. I want more orange and orange yellows than I do my basic yellows in the background. And what I'm actually doing here is as I'm painting this, normally I'd be walking away from it, but what I'm doing is really looking in the camera to see if I can, because the camera gives me a smaller image of this, and just trying to keep my pattern fresh and interesting. So this is going to be more, you can see it, it's going to be more strong yellows and yellow reds. I'm sorry, yellow oranges. Going right off the top of that. Okay, so let's assume that that's the case right there. I want to add some maroons in here. But you can see what I'm doing. By rounding this off, I'm creating interesting patterns. Am I not? By rounding, by turning this, I'm creating some interesting patterns here. And again, it doesn't have to be exact. What it has to be is convincing. All right, so let's go try to get some maroons. Where I'm going with my maroons are going to be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with burnt sienna. Okay, so here's basically what I wanted to do is to come in to these areas a little bit more with some more maroon colors, because they're going to be, and I'm just taking a brush right now. I'm going to change this over, but normally I come in here and I just sort of, okay, say let's make this a little bit more interesting, that this is going to be more maroon colors or darker colors over here in some of these trees. Okay. Well, I do want that. There's no question about that. I do want that, but I want it to be sort of more on the reddish brown side. And what I prefer to do is to start to continue with my feeling of my heavy colors here, but with water. I don't want to get a dry brush look yet. Okay, so I'm still going back and patting this a little bit more. All right, now this is basically what I'm doing is I'm picking up my alizarin crimson and going over some of this. Making it a bit darker here and there. Now right here, I'm not going too dark on this stuff. And I'm not pressing down heavily. I'm just brushing this, like just touching the tops of this a little bit here and there. Okay, I want to get it a little bit darker. I'm going to come in here with a little bit more of my, I'm going to add a little bit of my blue, cobalt blue with this here. Get it a little bit more maroonish, bluish in color, blue-brown in color. So this is one of the ways in which to handle this kind of look. All right. Okay. So this is sort of straight line down here. Maybe we'll bring it over here a little bit more. All right. And of course, we have some under here. All right. So I think we're pretty good. Got some good feeling to the whole this whole thing right here. And going back to my, I'm going to go back now and put another base of orange in here. So, where's my tissue? Now, paper towel, you know, I've been using tissue. Tissue's good for this. And I suspect, and I'll just probably, let's just test it out, but here's the paper towel that I usually work with. We'll do the same thing with that. Wet it. And go back in here and get a little bit more of that cadmium yellow. Nice bright colors. All right. All right, so I'm just going to right now I'm going to just use that as my base, put my branches in. We'll do all of the ground over here, and then I'll go back afterwards and do a little bit more detail. So I now need to look at where I'm going to go with my tree trunks here. Okay, now the only issue that I have with what I just did here, if it's an issue, and it may not be because I'm doing everything else light, is that the paint that I'm putting down here is very dense. So it's fairly dark, but I don't think we're going to have any problems with that until, or if it shows up as I go on, we'll probably have to adjust it, maybe pull out some of the lights. But I think it's going to work pretty well the way it's going. So if I take my, let's see, I'm going to take my small round brush here. Now we're working with darks, so all of the trunks of the trees are going to be dark, and we're going to end up with, I'm going to end up over here with, starting out with my yellow ochre as part of these trees. So we're going to end up coming over here, for instance, and I'm going to put in a I'm going to make a yellow ochre with a little bit of, I have to make this a little bit darker. And grayer. Because I just putting that yellow ochre in has suggested to me that with all of this light stuff and bright stuff over here, that it may not show up too well. Okay, so here we go. So we'll do, what I'm going to do over here is I'm just coming in and putting in my tree trunk. All right, tree trunk with my limbs. And you're going to see what ends up, you're going to see what happens. My trunks, I have limbs, trunks, then I have leaves that are next to it, okay? So here's my trunk, and I'm going to start to come down here, and we're going to gray it up a bit. So I'm going to add blue in here, and we're going to get a little bit darker. I'm going to add my cerulean blue, cobalt blue, my cobalt blue to my mixture, and I'm going to get a darker gray as I come up here, because this is all going to be darker. And I'm going to just do a limb at a time, or a tree trunk at a time, with the limbs that are going to go in here. I'm going to have a limb in this area here, coming down here. All right, we're going to just start to put some of this in, and maybe a little bit of my alizarin crimson, excuse me, mixed into this. All right, we're going to start to come up here. I'm going to show this tree here. Right, and then I got a tree next to it right here. Now, see what I just did with my tissue coming in here? I want to take some of that out. I'm going to put some darks back in, but I want to make sure that I got enough mid-value to make this happen too, because there's going to be dark and mid-values in here. Alright, so I got the nice strong limb going up here, trunk going up in this area here. And there's going to be a limb that's going to come off here, here, here. I've got a limb coming off up in this area here. I'm going to put some, let's put some leaves against that. All right. Pretty dark stuff going on there, right? My trees. Now, you know, it's interesting because I've watched other artists do this stuff, and they'll mask a lot of this stuff to put in there, and then they'll just paint all of this stuff around it and lift it off. I don't think you need to do that. At least for me, I don't think it's necessary. But where I'm going with this is I'm just painting in. I'm following now, what I'm doing is I'm painting over my pre-drawings, and I made the drawings of my trunks fairly dark, so if I go right over those, it really doesn't make any difference. What I'm actually doing here with this light and dark stuff that I'm putting in, I'm using my tissue to do it. What I'm actually doing is creating a little bit of sunlight hitting this, and then we're going to make some of this even darker as we go forward, and some of it's going to be lighter, you know, but we got all kinds of branches and stuff going on down here, so we just want to make sure that we got a nice, interesting array of branches coming out of here. This is, again, my belief is it's a maple tree. These are maple trees, but I'm not a tree guy, really. That is to say, I don't really have enough knowledge to know whether or not I'm using the leaf as a base, and I think that's what I'm dealing with here is maple. Okay, anyway, so we've got something over here. We've got a little one back here. And we're going to put a few more in there. We got a few more back here. So there's going to be more to this trunk. Now, I don't want you to think that that's the end of it. It's not. I'm just coming over here and just creating a lot of different, just sort of branches. Okay, we have the same thing going on over here. We got a big trunk here, coming down here, here. In this area here. I'm gonna probably in this one make this even darker and redder. And it's going to come right down into this area here. I got a nice rock behind there too that we're going to end up putting in, but we'll do that. And you see, wherever there's space, we can. Now, I'm not really following the. I'm using the reference, but I'm not really following that tightly because I can't see between all of those leaves so much. I'm just saying, hey, I've got space over here. We're going to put a limb in this. And I got a space over here. We're going to put a limb over here, and probably going to be a nice. Maybe let's bring a nice limb over here and up this way here. Okay, so that's what I'm really doing, is I'm just sort of adding these different branches. We got a nice one here. We'll make this all dark. We got thinner ones over here, and make these stand over here. And I got one that's right over here. Okay. And since it's not really a short tree, we'll have to continue this up to over there. So we're going to make some of these are going to be darker, and I'm going to add my darks in there right now, using a combination of my blues and browns, or that is burnt sienna. Texture-wise, a little bit of burnt sienna in my cobalt blue, a little bit of burnt sienna in my cobalt blue. Burnt sienna, if I really want it really super dark, I'm going to probably use a French ultramarine blue as well. But either one, it doesn't make any difference. There's nothing exact. There's no exactness to this, I don't think. You know, I'm not sitting down saying, hey, you have to do it this way. What I'm really trying to do is to create a light and a dark sort of area. I'm going to bring these down, and I want this to come down on this side here a little bit more. And I'm going to fatten that one up. Okay, so that way you can get a feeling of light and dark in these. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to make this a little bit grayer. Okay, right under here, for instance, right over there. Okay, right in here and in here. Now, you know what I'm doing? It's very interesting when I start to do this stuff. Right, with multicolor, I'm just multi-valuing this tree, essentially, or these trees. All right, so I'm putting a little dark there, and where they come together is where I'm hitting little dark spots, where this branch here moves, where this connects to this one right here, or if it's underneath, like right under here and under here, right, if it's underneath, some of the areas of my trees where it's darkest, I'm doing the same thing. Right in here, I don't want that mess. And the danger that we run into here is the fact that I don't want to create this sort of mass, big massive area. I'm going to probably lift some of that out. This is pretty, some of this color here. Might have got too dark here and there, but we'll see where it goes. Okay, so, and for instance right here, look. Okay, and under here. Now, again, my strokes, I can't emphasize this enough. My strokes are not strokes, detailed strokes. The strokes are strokes to give me the impression or the feeling that I want in this tree. Right? There's a series of lights and darks. They're going to be darker closer to the ground here. These trunks, but you'll get the feeling of this. The only really way you can do it, or get to understand it, is to just do it. Now, I'm going to make some really lighter strokes back here to indicate some more of those trees that are in the background, and that's going to be done with a really smaller brush and a lighter tonal value, okay? So where I'm going with this is I'm going to lighten it up with water, and I'm going to just sort of put a couple. I'm assuming what's going to happen over here is this is basically all going to be sky. Making some of these lighter, and you know, with all of this stuff crossing, this is the other thing, is that there's really how you really can't tell sometimes when what one branch goes off into the other. So let's get some just light blue here. Where I want to do is I want to put some of this background in right now. So I'm going to mix it up with my yellow. The yellow that I have in my palette, actually, is all I'm doing here. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to end up... Probably have to use a bigger brush because I don't want to use a small brush to do that. I want to get... So taking my cerulean blue, moving it in here on top of my yellow, getting a little bit of a greenish cast to this. All right? And we're going to create these background for the background hills. And they're going to be cooler. I don't want them as warm. I want all of this stuff back here to be cooler. Off in the distance. Okay. Maybe make it a little bit yellower as we come over here. Let's see if we can get it yellower. Yellow green. As it moves in here and back of here. I got a rock there, so all right, and then maybe a little bit of a blue cast. We got something back in this area here. Okay, so that gives me a base in which to go by. Nice cool subject. Coming down over here, we're just going to make this a little bit greener. And top that off back there. Okay, so these are clumps of trees, clumps of leaves. So we played around with a lot of this stuff, and I think maybe I might have overdid it. I'm going to take some of it out. Because I get really, it's too heavy. Well, maybe it isn't too heavy. We'll see. Yeah. See if I can. Okay, I may end up going back and putting some light in there, some Okay, so we've got our trees in here. We've got all this nice bright color going on. We want to put some of that down here as well, but we want the base down in this area to be sort of a greenish base. But before I do that greenish base, I need to get that yellow base. All right, we got this. So we're going to come down here. Now, I'm just sort of painting now. All I'm doing is I'm coming in here and I'm doing wet on dry. And scared me for a minute. I thought I didn't have this running. Big brush. Let's go back to our big brush. All right, we'll get the under painting done. Okay, so that's that. And again, we have leaves on the ground. Our grass. Make some of this softer. Now I'm doing this because I want to tone down some of that heavy dark. What I didn't do is some of this. Okay. Now, let's get some darker green in here. My cobalt blue and my new gamboge. I'm going to put some shadow in here too. This is basically just sweeps of my brush, my hilly area, and we got some shadows over here, and shadows coming down this way. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get some, I'm going to start to pepper some of this more, get some more darks in there. Leafy-like darks. But we'll, and then we should be pretty much done. Okay, what I'm also doing is I'm creating some texture here. Right, so in these dark areas right here, for instance, I'm doing a little bit of scraping to create some texture. Not a lot, just a little bit here and there, to give the trees a bit of character. While this is all wet, I have to wait for that all to dry anyway. Okay, so I just figured I'd go in and scrape a couple of things, a few marks, not many. You don't want to put a lot of marks in there. So you want this to be nice and flush and fluid, and get some of this pepper some of this stuff, this trees in here, and we could probably do that best actually by coming up here and picking up a little bit of that yellow. And this just sort of represents some of those leaves that are falling. A little orange maybe. Alright, and we'll do some really dark green. Uh-oh. Well, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? We'll have to do something with that. Make it a rock or something. And to help this along, okay, okay, ready. All this is doing is adding to those leaves we're adding to those leaves without my going in and painting this stuff in there. Let me just make this a rock of some sort here. Okay. A few rocks. Had to put one in. Adding some root structure down here. See, we'll let it go. So we're going to let that set, and I believe it's going to be it. Might throw a little bit more spattering in there, but I'm going to let that all set up right now, and then I will be back. Well, as you can see, it's dried. I had to go somewhere. It's dried out here, and this area here where I had all of that water did not work out too well. So we're going in here right now, and I'm just going to try to lighten up some of this stuff. Let me do this. And what I'm going to do is come in and I'm going to drop some more paint in there. Let that dry. Over here we're going to end up, these didn't turn out to be so bad actually. They didn't turn out to be rocks, but they didn't turn out to be so bad. So I'm not even going to worry about that. Actually, what I'll do is get my straight let's come over here and take some of this out of here, lighten that up. I'm going to do the same thing right here. This looks like it leaked. Something happened over here. I'm not too sure what. But we'll just lighten this up here. I was able to do this because I got away from it. Alright, and okay. So we're going to just let that go, and then I'm going to put a bunch of branches in here. So this is just all representative of leaves. And I'll get my real thin brush, get my rigger, and start putting in some dry brush, I can pick up some paint. And I'm just going to make these a little bit more interesting. There's twigs all over the place. I'm going to change the colors up. Take some green, make some of these a little bit darker. Okay. Take some blue. And put some of the sky back in here. I want it white. I want to create a light blue. Okay. Actually, I'm going to do something else here too.